And recording. Good evening and welcome. If you're in the UK, it's 9 o'clock in the evening. And if you're in the East Coast of America, then it's 4 p.m. And if you're on the West Coast, it's 1 p.m. Welcome to this very special show, because I'm glad to say that my guest today is somebody I've known for several years, Mike Allton, author of The Unauthorized Guide to Hootsuite, and another book we're going to learn about shortly. Good evening, Mike.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. I know you've just been to Social Media Marketing World. How was that?
Oh, that was fantastic. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun, talked to so many people, and I expected it, but it was amazing to me. Just like you and I here, we've never really met. We've only had casual conversations through social media. That was true for me, for so many other people. And I got to actually meet them face to face. And it was like we'd known each other forever. It was like a high school reunion in many senses of the word. And it was just fantastic. So that was the best part. And that's what I was looking forward to. The sessions were great. I came away with lots of tricks and tips and new tools to try. But the relationship building and the opportunities that's going to create in the future, and just, the ability to take a few days and spend time with colleagues is just priceless.
Indeed, the meeting face to face just brings the whole thing to life, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, over 3,000 people there.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah, and it's a mix. Some people are like me; they're kind of professionals in the space. They're bloggers and social media marketers and so on. Many of the attendees are people who work for a business and they're in charge of their social media, right? So in fact, I met people where maybe they're new hires. They were brought in, they said, okay, you're going to be in charge of our social media, but you don't know anything about social media. So we're going to send you to this conference and you take notes and you learn and you come back and you make us all-stars on Facebook.
Well, it's brilliant for that, isn't it? Because if you're going to immerse yourself in social media for 2-3 days, it's the place to go. It's on my list of things to do.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now tonight we're going to be talking about social media for bloggers. Because this is a subject which you've written extensively on the Media app, and you've just published a book. I did post a picture of it earlier, but
I saw you were doing that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's my third. I'd call them short books. They're ebooks. I do have. I started to make a printable version of my Hootsuite book, and it didn't seem like there was enough demand. And I had to laugh because you said it was unauthorized, and it really was. I originally called it The Book on Hootsuite because it is. Yeah. And I was working with Hootsuite, and they're like, "Well, we don't want you to call it that. We'd be more comfortable with the unofficial book on Hootsuite."
Okay.
So that's what it is, the unofficial book. Right. And there's disclaimers all over that they had nothing to do with it. And, but yeah,
it is the insider's guide. I mean, it totally changed the way that I use Hootsuite, and I make far more extensive use now than I did before I started reading the book. And it's something I return to because it's full of hints and tips, and there's virtually something in every page. Now, okay, social media and bloggers. First of all, the first place to start is with the blog post, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, is there...
Excuse me.
Right, okay. How should a blog post be prepared? I mean, we're all experts on various things, but are there some elements of a blog post which should be present in all our writings?
Yeah, because if we're talking about the social media aspect, I mean, if you were just writing and you were presenting your writing to a group of people at a conference or at a presentation, or maybe you're part of an organization, that's one thing. But if you're blogging, an element to that should always be that you are hoping for and expecting a certain amount of social activity. And it's got to be more than just your own. The ideal is that other people like yourself go and read your content and then share it with their network, and that's how you grow that readership, which means the blog post has to be shareable.
Okay.
Right. So it needs to have, for instance, great social sharing buttons. And, so these are the buttons that maybe are at the top of the blog post, maybe along the side, maybe at the bottom, maybe all three spots. And they're going to allow somebody to click a button and instantly come up with a sharing dialog box that's unique for whatever social network they clicked.
Right.
So, most people have, for instance, Facebook and Twitter, so I click the Twitter button and they can immediately tweet out a link to that particular piece of content. Now, which social networks? That depends on the blog and your audience. Should you have them all? No. Unless you're really writing about social media like I am, you probably would only want to have a very limited, very specific set of social sharing buttons, like just Facebook and just Twitter, and that's it. Or just Google Plus and Pinterest, or just LinkedIn, or wherever it is that your audience tends to resonate the best with that particular content, because it's the paradox of choice. If we give people 10 different choices, they're more likely to choose none than the one choice that you really wanted them to make. So if you kind of scale that back a little bit and just have 2, maybe 3 or 4 tops options,
right,
so that's going to result in more shares.
Yeah. So the software you get allows you to switch them off. So you switch off the networks which are not going to be of interest to you, and
right,
you're focusing people.
Yeah, and that could be one of the differentiators, between what app you choose or what widget you choose. Because if you're on WordPress, for instance, there's lots of plugins that you can choose. If you're not on WordPress, you might be on a platform where there's built-in options, or you can go out to, say, a Shareaholic or Add This and just take a snippet of code and plop it into your website. But you want to have some control. So that's at a minimum, being able to pick and choose which social networks you want to display and encourage those shares on.
Right. Okay, understood. Now, in terms, staying with the blog again for a moment, how important are graphics?
They are 100% critical. If you don't include a graphic with your blog, don't expect it to be shared on social.
You stopped. If you don't have a good graphic, nobody's going to be interested.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they won't share it, but first of all, you don't have that. You can't have that expectation, because if you don't have a graphic that's built into your blog post, at least one graphic, what happens when somebody does happen to share it? That share looks awful by today's standards.
Yes.
Facebook, Google Plus, LinkedIn, when you share a link, those networks will automatically go to that link and look for a graphic to include in, because those networks know that the graphic is going to make the post more interesting and create more engagement for you. Pinterest, you cannot share an article to Pinterest if you don't have a graphic. Yeah. So you've totally ruled out that network. And it's one of the top traffic drivers for many bloggers today. So that's not a good idea. And the statistics show that tweets with an image get 2 to 4 times as much engagement and click-throughs as naked tweets without an image.
Understood. Can we just stay with Pinterest at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned that's a huge driver for blog traffic.
Yeah, and obviously that's going to vary. Some people spend more time, some people less, and that's one of the real keys for me. It's something I talk about all the time. People ask me which social network is best, and I typically say it's the one you spend the most time on, because the one that you invest the most in, that's what you're going to get the most out of. But Pinterest, is fantastic for bloggers because they're able to create nice, tall, beautiful images that really resonate with people. And it's really easy, generally speaking, to get that kind of engagement and interest.
Okay. Well, that's, the other thing, right, okay. So we've got our blog. It's got a graphic on it. It's got a good graphic on it. What should our next steps be? Once we've...
Yeah, well, one of them might be to create additional graphics. Okay. Depending on your niche and your industry and your audience, this is something I strongly recommend people test. Creating a second, third, or even fourth graphic, and we'll get into the mechanics and specifics of that in a second. But taking the time to do that might prove very worthwhile. You might see a lot of additional traffic and interest and engagement due to the other graphics that you create, or you might not. So definitely test that. But a good example is most of us, if we have a graphic at the top of an individual blog post, it's probably one of these wide but short graphics, right? We call that a landscape format. Pinterest prefers tall graphics. And I say Pinterest meaning not just the network, but the overall community of users, because those tall graphics, they stand out. As you're swiping through or scrolling through the stream on typically your smartphone, it's those tall graphics that your eyes are going to spend the most time on because they're still going past the screen, rather than a short graphic that just swipes by. So those tall graphics generally are going to perform better on Pinterest than a landscape graphic. Similarly, on Instagram, if you're going to use Instagram for a blogger to support your blog, and I highly recommend that you do, those square images are probably what's going to work the best. The landscape image works okay on Twitter, and it's okay on Facebook. The square image is also okay on Facebook. The tall image is okay on Google+. So ideally, if you really want to leverage all the different social networks, you'd be creating 3 graphics for each and every blog post.
Right. Okay.
But test it. See if that actually has an impact for you.
Right. Okay. Now, in terms of creating graphics, what software do you use?
Well, for most bloggers, I strongly recommend Canva. If you've never used it, you or anyone in the audience, it's canva.com, and it's essentially a free graphic design tool. Now, if you have access to Photoshop and you have Photoshop training or can get training in Photoshop, well, then by all means, Photoshop is awesome, as is Adobe Illustrator and some of the other high-end tools. But for most of us, that's kind of out of reach. There's a high price point for those other tools and a much steeper learning curve to getting started. Whereas Canva, you can jump in. There are templates you can use. I don't necessarily recommend using the templated designs because other people can use those. Yeah. But I do recommend the templated sizes, right? So if you know that you are specifically creating an image for your Facebook page cover, that image that goes at the top of your Facebook page, you can choose that template, and Canva will give you the absolute correct size right there and then. You can certainly specify whatever size you want. So if you know what size you want, you can put that in the custom dimensions. But that's a huge time saver. And you can create templates of your own. So if you know that your blog images are always going to be 900 by 450 for the main blog post image, have that set up as a template. Okay. You can have your style set, your logos in there, your colors, your fonts, all that preset so that you're focusing on the message. Right. And you're focusing less on the tool and the mechanics of creating a graphic. Right.
So you do the hard work first, and then you can make use of it over and over.
Okay. And believe me, this is from somebody who is awful at graphic design. Before I used Canva, I was using Mac Preview.
Okay, yeah.
To create images. And really, it was just I'd go out and I'd source an image, usually a free image from Flickr, and I'd throw it in a Mac Preview and scrawl some basic text on it and put that up in my blog. They were awful images. They were better than no image.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But they were still awful images. And then, the wonderful Peg Fitzpatrick introduced me to Canva, and it's night and day. Okay. Really. Yep. It's not just me. Anybody who looks at my blog says, oh my gosh, Mike, wow. Because not that my images today are just awesome, but the difference between what I can create today and what I used to create using junk tools is amazing.
Right. So quality image is part of a quality blog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So how important are keywords?
Keywords are still really, really important. There's a lot of development in search. If we follow David Amerland, we'll know all about semantic search and how Google is striving to understand not just specific words, but what those words mean and what are synonyms and those kinds of things. So that way, my cat's running around, so that's top of mind, right? So you got cat, but you also have pet, you also have companion, you also have feline, you also have kitten. These are all words that have that joined meaning. So if you're writing content, you don't have to keep saying cat, 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 cat. right? You can write, 500 words and include a mixture of those words in that content, and Google gets it, which is great for us as bloggers because we don't have to stuff keywords into a blog post. But the keywords are still important. You can't write about just whatever you want. You have to have some sense of not only what your audience is looking for, but what kind of search is happening out there. So definitely use some tools, use Google Keyword Planner, use SBI for WP, use SEMrush to research what volume is happening today on the topics that you're interested in writing about or capable of writing about. That way you pick keywords where there's actual interest. And again, you can do some variations of the phrase once you've picked it and you start to write your content. Blog promotionology is an example. Obviously, you mentioned blog promotionology. I made that up. That's a new word. It's based on Brian Kramer's Shareology. I thought that was brilliant. So I created blog promotionology as a study of blog promotion. But the targeted keyword phrase is how to promote a blog.
Yes.
You'll see variations of that throughout the content so that my article and my content and my ideas will rank higher and higher for how to promote a blog.
Right. Understood. There's a whole topic there we could have another blog about.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Right. Okay. Now, you've written the blog. Everything's right. The SEO is right. The image is right. The text is good. It's on point. And how do you actually find where your audience are?
Well, that is something that, that's a big question. It's a good question. It's going to take time and it's going to vary from business to business. Generally, what you want to do is pick one social network to begin to invest a good amount of time in. And I say one because you're going to have to spend time looking at what other people are talking about, looking at their profiles, reading their posts, reading their content, and engaging with them. And it's going to be really challenging for most people to do that well on more than one platform initially. Once you get going, it gets a lot easier. It will get to that point. But let's just say, for instance, you're starting from scratch today on, say, Google+. Maybe you've never used Google+, right? Because that's probably likely half the audience. So you've never used Google+, but you want to.
Right.
And let's just assume that that's true. So you would go to Google Plus and you would begin to look for other people who are talking about things that are of interest to you, preferably actually related to your business. You might have an interest in horseback riding, and that's fine. That's great, actually, to have those kind of personal interests. But if your site's about growing cactuses, well, let's find other people who are talking about cactuses and plant fertilizer and the environments in which you're going to grow cactuses and all these different kinds of things. Do searches, find communities, find individuals, and start to engage with their posts and their content. And you'll slowly build what I call a core network of people, influencers, colleagues, and peers that you're going to engage with really on a day-to-day basis. Now, other people will start to flock to you if you're pushing out your own content, which obviously you should, and that's a big part of the blog promotionology. They'll find you as a result of your engagement on these other people's posts. They'll find you as a result of your engagement in the communities, and they'll find you through search, either within the network or on Google search, and see your content and say, oh yeah, that's cool. I like that. I was looking for that information, or I think that's interesting. And then they'll start to follow you from there.
Yeah. So the key is to get involved, because you can't expect to take, you've got to give, haven't you? This is all things we've learned on Empire.Kred and through all our social networking. Get involved.
Yes, that's right. It's not about broadcasting. And Empire Network, or Empire Avenue was a perfect example. You would not have been able to do anything within that game, within that network. You would not have been able to accomplish anything if you didn't spend any time. You had to connect with people. You had to invest in people, literally, right? And then they had missions, which was great. If you did it right, it brought visibility to whatever it was you were doing, a social post or a new blog content, and allowed your followers and connections on that particular network to go see it.
Right. Now I want to go with two things here. One is email lists as a blogger, and the second is, you've mentioned Google Plus already, but I noticed in reading your book that the idea of creating your own circle of people who want to see your blog first.
Yeah, so a couple of great questions in there. If you're starting off your blog, the first thing you do is you buy some hosting and you install WordPress or whatever platform you're going to use, and you set the theme, the overall design. The second thing you need to do is start your list. Right. I mean, that's got to be one of the first things you do. If you have a blog today and you haven't yet signed up for MailChimp or Aweber or some kind of email list and put a subscribe form on your site, as soon as I'm done talking, go do that. Literally go do that right now, because there's a statement that money's in the list, and that's one of several different cliches that are out there, but they're 100% true. I can't really monetize my social following, and I don't have ownership and control over my social following. I can't dictate to Google what to do with Google Plus, and when they make changes that harm Google Plus or harm my presence on Google Plus, there is nothing I can do about it. I've got 180,000 followers in Google Plus that really aren't doing anything anymore because of changes that Google has made with that network.
Right.
But Google can't touch my email list. It's mine. Those people have subscribed to my list because, they wanted to. They saw something that I read and they were interested, or I gave them something, an incentive like a free download. And so now they're part of my personal community, my personal network. And that's something that, I cherish, and I give back to them, and they give to me. And, that's how email lists and email marketing work. So you have to have that element. Now, you mentioned what I referred to as a blog notification circle. Yeah. And it was one of the fun little features in Google Plus that I think is going away. But one of the beauties of Google Plus was that you were able to create circles of whomever you wanted to. It's like lists on Twitter or lists on Facebook, but there's some differences. People could be in whatever circles you wanted to, even multiple circles, and you could organize it however you wanted to. So it could be by topic, by region, by your relationship with them, by how much you wanted to hear from them. And one of the things that I would often do is invite people, if they wanted to get notified of every time I had some new content to talk about, a new article, which was usually a couple times a week, they could join my blog notification circle. So that way, when I was first pushing that particular article out to Google Plus, I would include that circle and check a little box in Google Plus that said also send email.
Right.
Now, I hated that label because it was not accurate. What it should have said was notify, because whether or not I get an email is up to me.
Okay,
and it could be an email, it could be an SMS notification, or for most people, it's just a little ding inside Google Plus that says Mike Allton shared something with you.
Yeah.
So that was super effective when it was working, which was, as recently as 6 months ago, at letting a really core group of people know on Google Plus that I've shared something to Google Plus that's brand new. So it's very effective at getting a lot of eyeballs on that new Google Plus post and spreading it virally.
Right. Okay. Could you adopt the same principle by setting up a Facebook group?
You can.
Okay.
Facebook groups could be similar, particularly if it's a group that you started, and that's probably the best comparison. Not just Facebook groups in general, but a Facebook group that you start, you're the admin of, and therefore, when you get to control when you post to that, you get to control the rules. So many Facebook groups, like LinkedIn groups, if they're not strict about what you can and can't post, then they just become reservoirs of spam.
Indeed.
But yeah, if you take the time to foster a really good community, and the same is true with Google Plus communities, which are very vibrant today, and even some LinkedIn groups, if you take that time to nurture it, to be there and asking questions and answering questions of people, and obviously along the way making sure that everything that is said and done inside the community is very on point, then absolutely. If you've got a new piece of content that makes sense, share it in there.
Right.
You'll get tons of engagement.
Yeah. And the quid pro quo is that you will share other people's content as well, isn't it?
Yeah. That's absolutely right. I mean, that's really what social networking is about. It's not a broadcast medium just for you, right? It's got to be social, which means you're engaging with other people, you're doing things for other people. Typically, that just means sharing their content, because we're all virtual, so there's not a whole lot that anyone else can do. But that should be a huge part of every single blogger's social strategy.
Yeah.
Finding content for two things. Number one, curating other articles that are covering related topics, but maybe in a different angle or a different aspect. For instance, I don't really write a whole lot about Facebook ads, so I might go to John Lee Dumas or not John Lee, John Loomer, and pull some of his articles and share some of those to my Facebook page to really help my audience know how to use Facebook ads more than I'm willing to teach them.
Yeah. So
the second aspect, go ahead.
No, sorry.
Yeah, so the second aspect is that influencer part. Like I mentioned, John Loomer, okay?
Yeah.
He's an influencer in my space, right? And if I wanted to make a good impression on John, I would do just what I just said. I would share more and more of his content. I would pay attention to what he's talking about, and I would engage with him on his space, on his Facebook page or wherever, and make a good impression on him.
Right.
With no expectations. I mean, I got to say that. If you expect that they're going to immediately reciprocate whatever it is that you do for them, you're doing it wrong. Do it to start to create a relationship and just be open to whatever happens. They may not do anything. They may not notice that you might be one amongst millions of people doing the exact same thing. And there's just not enough time for them to pay attention, or you might really stand out. You might say something particularly clever in a comment on one of their posts or blog articles that really makes an impression that might lead to an interview. It might lead to them sharing out some of your stuff, maybe just retweeting it. I've had I've been blessed to be able to talk with people like Guy Kawasaki. So every once in a while, he tweets out one of my articles. I'm like, yes, awesome. And it's like or Marie Smith, who's the queen of Facebook. When I write about Facebook, she loves it and she shares it. I'm like, yes, that's awesome. So I do all kinds of things for her, because I want to maintain that relationship. And she's one of the fantastic people that I was pleased to meet at San Diego. Now, obviously, I'm talking about social media influencers. Mm-hmm. Every industry is different. Every industry has influencers. They're just, they might be different sizes. They might not have millions of followers, depending on the scope of the niche. There might be somebody with thousands of followers. It might be somebody who maybe isn't necessarily has a huge social following, but maybe they have an avid readership in a blog or a magazine or something like that. But those are the people that you need to find and connect with and begin to follow.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Just take a break for a moment because we've been going for half an hour. Welcome to everybody who's with us tonight. If you've got any questions, if you type /Q in the box bottom right-hand corner to gather your question, we will come to the questions as you post them. We're going to run on recording for about another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll open the seat and anybody can join us and ask my questions about social media and blogging. And my next question about social media and blogging. So content curation has become part of a blogger's world.
Are you talking about actually within as blog content or on social?
Well, by promoting other people, you're actually doing content curation, aren't you, for your audience?
Yeah, on social, right, which is something I do mostly today. I used to do some amount of curation actually within my blog. Okay. And we do see that a lot with bloggers in general. You'll see roundups. You'll see, this week in ... whatever industry you're in, and it's a blog post that goes out on Sunday, and you've gone and you've curated the top 5 best articles that are in your niche. And there's nothing wrong with those. It's another style. It's interesting. For the most part, if done well, it's not a time saver. So if you're thinking that it'll save you some time because you're going out and grabbing other people's things, you have to read those articles and introduce them and take the time to write and publish the blog post.
I just want to rephrase the question.
Okay.
Right. Okay. In order to get your blog promoted, content curating by promoting other people's content is part of a blogger's world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's basically the influencer marketing I was just mentioning. You want to identify. There's really two different kinds of influencers. There are existing influencers in your niche that you should be able to figure out relatively easily.
Okay.
Excuse me. But there are also influencers in your own social following. And if you're just starting, obviously you have none. But after you get going for a while and you begin to accumulate followers, hopefully you're using tools like Hootsuite, or there's more advanced tools like Brandwatch and Simply Measured that can help you identify, out of all of your followers, out of the people who are sharing your content, who are the influencers there.
Yeah.
Because you might find that there's somebody who's tweeting out your latest content every single time you hit publish, and they've got tens of thousands of followers. You never heard of them because maybe they don't publish themselves.
Yeah.
But they're sharing your content on a regular basis, and you could call them an influencer, you could call them a brand ambassador, on different terms. But there's somebody that you're going to want to pay attention to, and reach out to them and reciprocate in some way, and love on them.
Yeah. Indeed, it's so important to engage, not just with your audience, but with the people who are helping you promote as well. Now, there are two questions in relation to promoting, and the age-old question. We've just been talking about engagement, but there's also automation as well with applications like Buffer. What are your thoughts on that, of using applications like that?
Yeah, in general, I have no problem with automation. It's in making sure that we're doing it the right way, using it in the right places. Okay. So, for instance, you'll see in my article, when I have a brand new blog post, there's virtually nothing that's automated about those initial shares, because they are so important. I talk about how when I post on Google Plus, what resonates really well on that particular network is a really nice, sometimes a long introduction. Sometimes I will write as much in the introduction on Google Plus as I did in the blog post. Not often, but sometimes, because it works on that particular network, and that can't possibly be automated. Making sure that you send on a tweet the first time with a great image, your blog image or a special image, and hashtags, that can't be automated. So, making sure that you're mentioning people. I mean, here's another, point of influencer marketing. If you quote somebody or you talk about another person's article within your article, you have got to mention those people on social media, and that can't be automated. So that's the first part. But once that's done, once you get through that initial blog promotion, you got to automate the reshares, right? You've got evergreen content that you're creating, not the new stuff or the company stuff, but the articles that you're writing, whatever topic it is. If it's still good a month from now, 6 months from now, that's what we call evergreen. That's got to be reshared to social media. And then there's the whole conversation about how often and when and all that sort of thing. But you need tools to do that, or you're not going to do it. That's just the reality. So Buffer's fantastic for that. It's one of my top tools for resharing old content. Hootsuite can do it. It's not designed for that, so it's not as intuitive. You really need to use their bulk schedule tool to upload a bunch of stuff, and no one wants to do that. But Buffer's great for that. Social Oomph is also another one that I use for Twitter. And what's actually quickly becoming my favorite is Agora Pulse.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you've ever even heard of Agora Pulse.
I've heard of it. Lilac Bullet mentioned it.
Yeah. And because she was working with Ian Anderson Gray. Yeah. And they were doing a review of social media management tools, and I'm really becoming enamored with what Agora Pulse can do. And that's just one of the things. You can set up a queue of some of your evergreen posts, and let's say you've got 25 articles in your archive, and so you're going to send one a day, and you're going to skip Sundays, so you'll go a whole month, and you'll just, without repeating yourself. Okay. Within Agora Pulse, you can set it so that article A, as soon as it goes out, it gets put back to the end of the queue, and you can tell it how many times to regurgitate that article. So maybe you do that 12 times, and you've got an entire year's worth of content scheduled.
Okay, so automation, skip yes, Buffer yes, Agora Pulse is the rising star. Okay, now when you come to promoting, which networks would you promote on?
All of them.
Good answer.
Yeah, you're a blogger, okay? Yeah. You've got to promote. You've got to be everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean you have to start everywhere. Okay. If there's anyone in the audience that's listening that's, okay, I'm just now starting my blog, well, then pick one network and learn that network and so on. create a presence
Yeah.
on every social network so that you get their, your usernames reserved. If you look at my personal profiles, you can see I didn't go to every social network because mainly I've been doing this for so long. They're new. So I'm Mike Allton or M Allton or Mike_Allton. And it's really frustrating to me personally because I notice stuff like that. But ideally, you're setting up a brand for yourself. So you go to Facebook and create your page, and Google Plus and create your page, and Twitter and create a handle, and Instagram and Pinterest and so on. Do all that within your first week of getting set up. And then, like I said, focus on one at a time and get to know it and learn it and decide which networks you really like and love and where you want to spend that time. But once you get through that initial phase, whether it's a month or 6 months, and you're now kind of going, right, on all your social networks, when you've got a new blog post, that needs to go everywhere.
Okay.
It's got to be part of the checklist. You're going to go to all of the networks where you can share that content. And obviously some like YouTube, I can't share my blog links, right? Okay. I could create videos for my blogs, which is a whole nother topic, but I can't share my links. So that's out of the initial checklist, but everywhere else I can, that gets a link at some point in the initial life of that blog post.
Right, but point taken. So once you've written the post, you're just starting off. You've got to get it everywhere that you have a potential audience.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to take a long time. Okay. When I write a blog post, from the point when I hit publish, I spend maybe 30 minutes promoting it, which isn't a lot. I mean, there are other people out there who will tell you they spend 80% of their time promoting a blog post and only 20% of their time writing it. I'm not that way. I don't like talking about myself. I don't even like talking about my content, even though I really do think it's great. Yeah. I'd rather let other people do that. So there's that initial burst, but I've got a checklist. I go through these things. I've established the profiles. I've got my routine. It takes me 30 minutes. And that includes getting it into Buffer, getting it into Social Loom from my other tools, so that after that initial post, it's mostly automated from that point on.
Right. Okay. So I noticed at the back of Promotionology, which is the book on which today's chat is based, there's a checklist at the back, and people should follow that, and that will get them. If they're doing all of that, then they're doing everything that's possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And it's based on me seeing time after time after time bloggers where I go to their blog posts, and it isn't even like today. It might be a blog post that they published a month ago. They've got social icons on it, which is great. They've got social sharing counts, which is also great, and they're all at 0.
Okay, yeah.
So that tells me that they didn't even share their own blog post, right? Because if it published a month ago, they should all at least have a 1.
Indeed. Right? It's a good place to start.
So when I see that, I know they're not doing it. I know they're not taking the time to promote their own content to their social channels. And for goodness sakes, your own content that's the best post that you can create for your social channels. I mean, that should be feeding the most important parts of your social activity is your content. But some people don't do it.
No, indeed. I agree. I've seen similar where people don't. After they've got the inspiration, they've got a great image, they've written the most beautiful text in the world, and then nobody sees it. And Promotionology is the way to correct all that, leads you step by step through blog promotion. Right, okay. Now, which tools would you recommend in terms of getting the word out, just generally?
That the word out that you have a new piece of content?
Yeah.
The probably the most valuable tool to me and to most bloggers is your email list. Right. So for me, I happen to use MailChimp. Compared to each other individual social platform and other things that happen, sending out a notification to my email list that I've written a new article, that's the single biggest driver of traffic.
Right. Okay.
Of the things that I can do. Now, obviously, depending on the article, if somebody who's got some influence happens to share something, then who knows what can happen at that point. Like I mentioned, if Mari shares one of my Facebook articles, you're going to see a spike. I wrote about Google Plus a couple of years ago, and the vice president of Google Plus shared it. So
right.
That was a big spike. But you can't control that. So out of the things you can control, email should be number 1.
Right. Okay. Now, which brings us almost back to the beginning again. As a new blogger, you've written your blogs and everything. How do you actually build an email list?
I'm sorry, how do you build an email list?
Yeah.
A couple different ways. I mentioned, at a very, very basic level, make sure that somewhere on your site, no matter where somebody's is, it's always in the sidebar, header, and the footer, that if they're really interested, they can subscribe to your newsletter. And your newsletter can be whatever you want it to be. If it's just notifications of your new content, that's fine. If you want to create unique content in a newsletter, that's okay too. But that basic thing should be there, that basic sign up widget. Now, to take it a step further, do what I call a content upgrade. I didn't invent that, but other people do. But it's called a content upgrade, where let's say you've got an article like my blog Promotionology that's long.
Yeah.
You can take that entire article and convert it into a PDF and allow people to download the PDF because maybe they don't want to read it right there. And of course, they wouldn't just click the download. They'd give you their email address and you'd email it to them or email them a link to download it from there.
Okay.
That's the next step up. Now, the best ways is when you create new, unique content that's only available as a digital download.
Right.
So for instance, I wrote a book called How to Create Epic Content.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only available as a digital download on my site. I created another thing called it was a worksheet on how to structure your content as you're building up your blog, because as we just publish new blog posts, they're just in reverse chronological order on the blog, and that doesn't mean anything to anybody but us. So you need to be able to have some structure there, and it might only be in your brain what that structure is, but posts down here need to link to posts up here, and those need to drive people to this top post, which is your most important piece of content or your most important page on your blog. So there's this structure that you can build. So I have a worksheet that'll help you figure out what that is and how to build that and how to actually turn that into something that's actually going to drive traffic and revenue and sales for your business. But you can only get it if you give me your email address and I send it to you. Okay. And the beauty there is not only am I offering you an incentive for signing up, but I've created a particular piece of content that hopefully addresses a need and answers a question, and it by default targets you and segments you, right? Yeah. If you sign up to receive a worksheet that helps you structure your blog, that tells me you're interested in blogging. Yeah. You have a blog and you want to make it better. Okay. And now I know that, and I can put you in an appropriate group within my MailChimp, and I can make sure that if I have something else of interest to you, whether it's a new piece of content or a tool I want to recommend or a service I want to sell or whatever the case might be, you're more likely to be interested in that because I've properly targeted and segmented you.
Yeah, you've been listening.
You've been, yeah.
Right. Question from Skip. Are you talking, when you talk about the book, something like a Kindle book or a PDF?
If you're talking about digital download for email marketing, it's pretty much has to be a PDF. Okay. You can do both, which I actually have done. I have PDFs that are available on my site for free, and I put them up on Amazon for purchase as a Kindle, because some people want to do that, and that's fine. If they want to spend $3 on an ebook rather than give me their email address, okay, that's fine. But generally speaking, I recommend creating as a PDF. And in fact, a little trick I'll tell you: use Google Drive, use either Google Docs or Google Slides, which are even better to create that PDF. Slides are a little harder because the text isn't going to automatically wrap to the next page and that sort of thing. But either of those, you can save it as a PDF, and all the formatting is intact, the links are intact, and you don't have to worry about that transition too much. So
good. Right, okay. Well, thanks for the question, Skip, and thanks for answering that, Mike. Now, you mentioned, we all know what backlinks are in terms of people linking to your blog site. What are forward links?
Forward links are, to me, related to deep links, which some of you might have heard. When you create a blog post, a new piece of content for your site, it's always good practice to link to other content that you've created. And again, if you look at the blog Promotionology article that I published or any of the other content that I published on my site, they all have links to other articles that I've written that help support that content. You know, the first time I wrote about Facebook ads, that gets a link for more advanced books, articles. So those are deep links, right? Links back to existing content.
Yeah.
What most bloggers don't do is go back to those old articles and link forward to the new content.
Okay. Yep.
Because we all have old articles that are continuing to get traffic mostly via search. You know, I've got an article on how to create multiple Twitter, or how to set up multiple Twitter profiles on your iPhone. It was just actually a newsjacking post that I published 2 years ago because there was an update to Twitter for iOS that suddenly allowed us to do this. So I just wrote about it, and it started to get a lot of traffic. So I added Android support and other kinds of information. And whenever possible, I found ways to link forward to other articles. You know, I've got an article on my site, The Ultimate Guide to Managing a Twitter Presence. So I linked to that.
Yep.
Within that article.
Yep. And as Simon's just said, that is a good idea. And if you can take one good idea away from a blog, then it's got to have been worth watching. And it's been worth listening for the last 50 minutes or so. Mike, it's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. And I see one question from Rod. I'll answer it. He says, is this an awesome set, or do I live with my mom still? No, I haven't lived with my mom in many, many years. She's actually in a totally different state. This is my office. I have my own house. I have a wife and kids, and this is my 3rd floor loft. And I actually did design the background specifically for doing live video, knowing that you'd be able to see what's behind me. So I wanted something that was interesting and reflected a little bit more about me and my personality. So it's a set.
Well said. Right. If there are any more questions, please ask away /Q and just type in the question. Mike, if you'd like to say thank you to everyone, we'll close the recorded session of the show. As I say, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me here, and I appreciate all the great questions from the audience. And by all means, if you have, if you come up with some other question, you know, hit me up on Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or Instagram or Pinterest or wherever you're at, because I'm already there and happy to answer them. Right.
So if you Google Mike Allton, you'll find him on the first page of Google. No problem at all. And from there, you can follow, as he said, the links through. You'll find the book on which this is based, and we'll just bring this up for the one more showing. Hope that it's probably not the right screen. Just a minute. I've lost it. The live video. I'll put the link in with the video later, because after we've finished recording, then this will be available on YouTube and on Facebook. So Mike, thank you, and I'll end the recording now. Thank you to everybody who's listened. It's been a pleasure, and we've learned something, as you always do. And hopefully we'll take the information that you've given us, take it away, and start promoting our blogs tomorrow, and get a bigger audience, which is what it's all about.